My question is about mindfulness with children. I have the feeling that children are so mindful. I've got a 1-year-old nephew. Everything he does it with like 100% focus, and he's so focused on what he does, and it's so nice to watch. Why does this mindlessness develop in the first place? Is it something that comes from the outside? Is it because of society? Is it something that develops from inside? Is it built into our DNA? Where does it come from? Why does it come from? That is the first question.
Before I answer that question, let me ask you a question. Where's that question coming from in you, Jimmy? In other words, I'll frame it slightly differently too. Who wants to know?
I want to know because I'd like to work with the mindfulness in myself and how to work with this mindfulness in myself.
Like, so why am I so mindful when my nephew seems to be like, why am I so mindless when my nephew
exactly.
seems to be so, if we're born mindful, why are we? You know, and the short answer is, I don't know. I mean, it's a very profound question, and it has to do with, obviously, the evolution of the human heart and the human brain and human community. And you could say, and I think I have at various points, that, you know, before there was even agriculture, when we were hunters and gatherers, you had to be pretty mindful. Because if you weren't mindful of every sound in the forest, you would maybe wind up being somebody's lunch. So I am guessing that people who, you know, sort of 10, 20,000 years ago and earlier, of course, there was no reading. We didn't have like these ways of generating more and more thoughts or paying attention to stuff that wasn't part of the natural world. So we were very tuned in to certain kinds of things. And also, we spoke about this the other day. Our capacity for cooperation really requires enormous sensing of how we can work together to, you know, run a mammoth over a cliff or whatever it is that was required for us to eat when we were hunters and gatherers. We depended absolutely on each other. So I think that's in our genome, okay? I'm no big expert on this field, but I think that that's definitely in our genome. But then look what happens with the evolution of culture. And now what they're calling, now we're way beyond agriculture and even in the Industrial Revolution, and we're into the, you know, the digital age to such a degree that we may be losing touch with the analog completely. And they talk about the attention economy. So billions of dollars are being spent every day to grab, this is the way it's often framed, your eyeballs, to make sure that your eyeballs look at this on the screen rather than that on the screen, even worse probably with the pandemic. And so we are in some sense being conditioned away from our natural instincts to be present without filling up the space of our minds. And the more complex the world gets, the more we have to be able to think and respond emotionally rather than react, just to survive and then to survive psychically and so forth. So I would say what we need more than ever is to make sure we don't kill it in the children.
Yeah.
We're killing childhood in the children. I mean, they're so tapped into devices now that they are so, you know, maybe we need to protect that kind of analog capacity that is our, you know, human inheritance long enough to be able to manage the digital, which is not going to go away, but to not be so completely captured by it that we become, in some sense, caricatures of human beings or even robots, where we're really, you know, lost, really profoundly lost in terms of mindfulness. So I really appreciate your framing it that way. And I'd like to, have you respond to what I just said and just tell me whether that lands well for you or whether there's other aspects of it you want to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so incredible because obviously children, they are very mindful, and somewhere in school or when you grow up, when you go to school, you should not identify with everything like in this tight way. In this, you should learn to think abstract, and maybe that creates this disassociation with myself. That's maybe what you're taught in school, that you should not dive into everything with your whole energy. You should maybe think more abstract, and maybe that's one of the
Well,
reasons.
that's part of the challenge here is to not deny the beauty of abstraction and of thinking. Mindfulness is not the enemy of thinking.
Yeah.
But awareness is so much bigger than thinking that it can hold the thinking in a way that doesn't allow it to imprison us or to collapse us into thinking over emotional intelligence, over somatic intelligence, over social intelligence, over deep listening, just perceiving, seeing a child as whole and as not needing anything else in any particular moment.
Yeah.
Except maybe relationality and kindness and your presence.
Yeah.
This is really the curriculum of the future because the children are the future, and they're going into a world that is very, very scary. Because if you read the literature on tech and biotech, that Noah, Yuval Noah Harari is pointing out in a book like Homo Deus. The very smart people, at the interface of molecular biology and biotech and tech, they're thinking actively about upgrading human capacities, just the way you wear glasses, I wear glasses. Who's going to argue with that? But what about a memory upgrade or, what about, and internal, and what about the genetic upgrade? When do we stop being human and we start being Homo Deus? And do we want that? And while we're still human, can we ask ourselves the question, is there something else we need to accomplish to live our way into the full dimensionality of being human before we give up being human? And I think the stakes are actually that high for the coming, say, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. I don't know what it will be. But whatever it is, I'm all for not surrendering our humanity and really discovering what it is and how it expresses itself in music, in poetry, in picking up a baby that's crying, in love, in every conceivable way, so that we don't abandon Homo sapiens sapiens before we live our way into it. Does that make sense to you?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the great answer. Yeah. I have a short second question, if that's okay.
Yep. Right on the hour, but it's okay.
Just on procrastination. I'm very good at procrastinating, just pushing things ahead. And my question is, how can you do things now without being too hard? Because I mean, discipline sometimes is hard. I can be hard to myself. How can I be soft and still get the things done now and not tomorrow? Is there, I mean, I don't know. The different techniques, but
I'll bet you a lot.
very...
I bet you a lot of people are nodding their heads about that one. Procrastination is like a, I don't know, it's its own special art form that a lot of us are really good at. I'll do it later.
Yeah.
There's a certain element of that that's okay. You know, it's healthy. Until things get so overwhelming that you got 100 things to do later, and there is no later. It's like, you know, and people are constitutionally different. I mean, when I was in the university, there were people that like did everything 10 minutes before the final exam. I was not in that group, you know. I wasn't that smart to be able to do that kind of thing. I had to actually, you know, study and, you know, sort of work my way into whatever it is. And I'm still that way, but I'm, you know, totally capable of procrastinating. But what's wrong with that? I mean, maybe a little procrastination's not such a bad thing unless it is overwhelming your life. What about mindfulness of your impulse to procrastinate?
Yeah.
Maybe mindfulness you could hold in awareness right in this moment that I don't want to do whatever it is that I should do in this moment. Should. Okay. So then you can be kind with yourself and say, okay, I'll do it later. But also know that later will then be now and it'll be the same old story. So sometimes
Yeah.
the best way to procrastinate is just do it now and then procrastinate about something else later. And then don't do that either. Do that now too. And you can undo your tendency, excuse me, undo, undo your tendency to just procrastinate from one thing to another if it's causing you difficulties, if it's causing you problems, or other people who live with you. If not, enjoy the procrastinating and just hold it in awareness.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Okay.